Okay, so I'm going with Felipe to check a bike. He's starting to cycle right now, and he's starting with a Pinarello, huh? So he found this used bike, and so he called me to go with him and check this bike. But it's in Jacksonville, and we're in Orlando, so it's like 2.5 hours driving. So he better ride this bike a lot. And I said, well, since you called me to join you and check the bike for you, you're going to be part of a video. We're almost there. We're like 5 minutes away, getting to Jacksonville. It's already dark. I'm not going to record like when we get there, when we go to see the bike. I'm not going to be recording because it's kind of weird, like 2 guys and 1 guy recording. So I'm going to check the bike, and then after that, if we really are going to keep the bike, I'll show you guys some specific parts and steps that you have to be aware when you're buying a used bike. What's important to look at when you're buying a used bike. So we're almost there. Let's check the bike and let's see how it goes. All right, so we just got the bike and he closed the deal. Happy guy, everybody's happy, and the bike is in great condition. Just checked everything. As soon as we get back to the garage, I'll be able to show you guys. It's a little bit dark right now. So we're gonna put the bike back on the car and head back to Orlando. Good morning. So yesterday night we came really late, so I was kind of tired. So Felipe dropped off the bike here, and I'm gonna give it a little tune-up, wash it, make it sparkling clean, and I'm gonna show you a few points that for you to observe when you're buying a used bike that is important for you to look. So first we can observe if this bike had any falls, and people can mask it up, but you can observe by looking, for example, on the saddle, if there are any scratches or bumps on this side here. Usually when people fall on the side, you can check the saddle, or on the shifter here on the sides, the brakes down here on the handlebar, and usually on the shifters is a component that people will not replace even after a fall, and it's no problem. It's normal sometimes to find some scratches on the handle, on the shifters, but just so you can observe and see, and usually when the person falls forward, you'll see both shifters right on the brake levers on the top. You'll see that they have scratches on both sides. Also, another place for you to observe is here on the derailleur. On the outside over here, if there's any scratches or dents, you will see that maybe the person had a little fall here and there. And that's nothing to be worried about. What you have to check is really the frame, because I think that's the component that's most important when you're purchasing a bike, especially a carbon bike. So things on the frame that you will want to observe is, of course, see if you can see any cracks. You can look really thoroughly and closely. But other points is like here on the seat tube. Sometimes people over tight the seat tube and it can crack the frame or the seat tube. So observe this. You can even unscrew the seat tube, take it out, and check it inside. That's something that you might see. It's important. Also on the quick release on the wheels, some people over tighten it, so you want to check that and see on the fork and here on the back if there are any cracks here, if the person has over tightened their wheels with the quick release. And also something very common down at the crank, I'll show you. So down here at the crank, what is common to happen is the chain to fall between the crank and the frame, and sometimes people, they slam their pedals and it ends up scratching or leaving a dent on the frame. Sometimes I have some of my bikes that happen that, and usually it's nothing to worry about, but if it's too damaged, you might want to check someone that understands, and is a specialist on carbon, and maybe he can just patch that or fix that dent. But what you can do is spin the crank and look inside to see if there's any dent, especially on this back part over here where the chain sometimes falls in there and can damage the frame. So just observe that when you are buying a used bike. And since we're down here, you want to check also the crank and the bottom bracket, and a great way to see that is by spinning and see if there's any loud noise, like imagine the bearings with no grease and you see the little ball bearings spinning inside, so it makes like this echoey sound, like metal rubbing metal. And it echoes through the frame, so you can usually hear that. But this looks pretty good. And another thing that you want to do, and this you want to do on the ground, with the bike on the ground, is to do this movement sideways with the crank sideways to see if there's any play or any noises. Another thing is on the ground, the bike on the ground, hold the two brakes, hold it firmly, and with one foot put pressure on the crank arm, really putting pressure on the frame and on the bottom bracket to see if you hear any clicking noise. So now you will also want to check the bearings and the hubs of your wheels, and you will also want to spin. It should spin freely and without major noises or clicking. This wheel is okay. And another way to check that, to see how if it's well adjusted or not, is to push it sideways, the wheel, to see if there is any play. Sometimes it's just a quick release, it's not tighten it correctly, so you can open the quick release, tighten it, make sure it's tight, not over tight, but tight enough, and then just push it sideways. Sometimes it's just a little bit of adjustment on the hubs, and that will solve the problem. If it's an older bike, I would recommend servicing the bearings, and even better, replacing the bearings on the wheels. A lot of people think, oh look, the tire is new, so yeah, this bike must be new. Usually this is a component that's really easy to replace, and it would be the least of your problems if you had any issues with the bike. But it's something for you to check. And usually when the tire is very rounded, it has no flat, it's not flat on the top, that means it hasn't been ridden, the tires at least. And I know this bike hasn't been ridden a lot because these tires are original that comes with the bike. I know that because I have one, I bought one new, and I know that this bike comes with these tires. Only if the person used another tire or another wheel, but it didn't seem like the person that sold the bike was a cyclist and he would have any extra wheels. So this bike looks pretty new. An important thing to check also is the head tube. So on top here, you want to spin sideways to see if there's any noise, the same way as in the hub that you see this echoey sound when you're spinning. It's clear, no sound, no clicking. So the head tube looks very good. The bearings here looks good. You can also get the handlebar and make sideways force with the handlebar. Sometimes that's just an adjustment that you will have to do, and I would recommend doing this adjustment with a bike mechanic at your local bike shop. And of course, you want to check your brakes to see if they're working properly, if they're firm. You can press it hard to see if there's any play or any issues with that. Now lastly, but not least important, you want to of course check the drivetrain. So you want to play with the gears, see if every gear is changing properly. I would recommend, of course, you taking the bike for a spin if that is possible. Of course, if you buy a used bike at a bike shop, they will guarantee the bike at least for 30-60 days. So you'll go safer that route. But if you're buying directly from another cyclist, these are points that you want to observe. But on the drivetrain, you want to check, a great way for you to check if everything is okay. It's not by just shifting and working the shifters, but is to check the chain. So to check the chain, you need a chain ruler. That's easy for you to buy online, and you can measure how stretched the chain is. I can do a video on that, how to check your chain, but it's a simple, easy process. If the chain ruler does not go in your chain, it means the chain is new, and that's the probability that the chain is new and your drivetrain should be okay. If it's a little worn out, no problem, replace the chain. It's not an expensive component of the bike, and probably the cassette is still okay. But if the chain is very stretched, you see that you put the ruler and it has a lot of play and it comes in and out really easy, then probably the person has been riding with that chain, that stretched chain, for a long time, and that could cause some damage on the cassette. So just to keep in mind that if that is the case, you might will have to replace not only the chain but also the cassette, making it a little bit more expensive to replace these components. Well, so this is pretty much the basics. If you want to buy a used bike, of course you can go deeper on your investigation. You can remove the crank arm, look inside the frame, check the bearings, remove the seat post and see inside the frame too, and do a deeper investigation. But you know, if you're buying from someone and you trust that person, I wouldn't worry much about it. I would only worry if that person had a serious accident with the bike and for some reason the frame is cracked or something like this. But like usually Pinarellos, Specialized, Giant, all these well-known bike manufacturers are quality bikes with quality components like Shimano or SRAM. They're great components, they're great bikes, they last for many years. Sometimes it's just a matter of taking to your bike shop to do a tune-up or replacing a part here and there. So you shouldn't have a problem. So these are a few aspects that you will want to take a look when you're purchasing a bike from another cyclist. You want to check these points and you should be okay. And so we're gonna wash this bike, degrease the drivetrain, re-lube it, and have it ready for Felipe to ride.